All right, 6 o'clock. Good evening, everyone. Today is May 5th, Tuesday, regular City Council meeting. Due to COVID-19 pandemic emergency, we have to handle our City Council meeting much differently than we usually do, due to the safety of our staff and due to the safety of public. Now I would like to ask our City Manager, Mr. Haglund, to give a brief description, explanation to the public.
Good evening. This meeting of the Galt City Council is being conducted by teleconference, video conference in compliance with the state and county stay-at-home orders as allowed by the governor's executive order N-29-20, which allows for a deviation of the teleconference rules required by the Brown Act. Members of the public will see council members and city staff who are appearing via remote video or telephone connections. City council meetings will be held by teleconference or video conference only until further notice. Today's agenda states that rather than attending in person, residents can submit written public comments via email to pubcom@cityofgalt.org. That's PUBCOM @cityofgalt.org prior to the council meeting or during the council meeting as any item comes up. Any written comments that were received prior to 5:30 p.m. today will be read out loud during the council meeting by the city clerk on the appropriate agenda item, subject to the customary 5-minute time limit. We will try to check the email for additional public comments during the meeting, and we are looking at ways to expand the options for public comments at future such meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haglund. Call the meeting in order, please. Tina may have a roll call.
Vice Mayor Lozano.
Here.
Councilmember Farmer.
Here.
Councilmember Campion.
Here.
Councilmember Lamson. Here. Mayor Sandu.
Here. Let's rise for the silent prayer and flag salute, please. Flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
For which it stands,
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
oh, come on.
All right, next agenda item B.
Just lost me.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear us, Kurt?
Yeah, I can hear you. I pushed the wrong
There
button.
should be, there should be a red button on the video camera.
All right, any agenda approval, addition and deletion, council?
In the replay statement.
Tina, make a replay statement, please.
This meeting of the Galt City Council will be cablecast on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on the Comcast Consolidated Communications and AT&T Uverse cable systems. The meeting is closed captioned and webcast at www.satmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will air Friday, May 8th at 9 a.m. and Saturday, May 9th at 9 a.m. A DVD copy is available for checkout from any library branch.
All right, thank you. There is no presentation. Next.
Mayor, I wanted to pull F3. I'm sorry, I had my mute on and I was trying to say something.
Okay, F3. All right, there is no presentation. Next agenda item D, public comment.
Under Government Code Section 54954.3, members of the public may address the City Council on non-agenda items. The public comment section is for the City Council to receive comments, except for brief responses to questions. No discussion or action may be taken on any item that is not listed on the agenda. Please limit comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Due to the statewide emergency and social distancing guidelines, public comments may be submitted via email to pubcom@cityofgalt.org and will be read out loud subject to the customary 5-minute time limitation. We have received 5 public comments as public comments and 1 public comment on a specific item. So I will read those 5 public comments first.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, the first one received is from Christy McLeod. Good evening, City Council members. City councils and boards of supervisors throughout California have been voting to reopen their cities and not enforce the unconstitutional executive orders that Governor Newsom has issued. The first 2 weeks of the shelter-in-place lockdown were somewhat understandable because we didn't know what mortality rate this virus carried. Now that we know it is extremely low and that California has been minimally affected, we need to open back up our communities and economies. Many people's livelihoods and mental health depends on it. The second one received is Robert Porter. I believe the shelter-in-place order issued by our governor originally was a safety issue, as we had no idea just of the mortality rate of this virus. Now we know that the mortality rate is very low and we, Galt, have been relatively unaffected. With the incubation period being 14 days, we are way past the critical stages and ready to reopen our city and businesses. This lockdown is and remains unconstitutional, and as our city council members, you represent us, not the governor. After all, everyone knows that he has way overstepped his authority, and if our city council follows this order any further, your decisions will be remembered when we go back to polls. The next one is from Peggy Porter. City councils and board of supervisors throughout California have been voting to reopen their cities and not enforce the unconstitutional executive orders that Governor Newsom has issued. The first 2 weeks of the shelter-in-place lockdown were somewhat understandable because we didn't know what mortality rate this virus carried. Now that we know it is extremely low and that California and especially Galt has been minimally affected, we need to open back up our communities and economies. Many people's lives and mental health depends on it. How many more businesses will be unable to open if they stay locked down any longer? Please hear our plea. The next one is from Kimberly Pennington. City councils and board of supervisors throughout California have been voting to reopen their cities and not enforce the unconstitutional executive orders that Governor Newsom has issued. The first 2 weeks of the shelter-in-place lockdown were somewhat understandable because we didn't know what mortality rate this virus carried. Now that we know it is extremely low and that California has been minimally affected, we need to open back up our communities and economies. Many people's livelihoods and mental health depends on it. The next one is from Joe Pryor. Dear City of Galt, why are our tennis courts at the Walnut Community Park under lock and chain? Sacramento County lifted the restriction on tennis courts last Friday. Many cities like Sacramento and Folsom have opened their tennis courts. When I asked this question to the director of Park and Rec yesterday, I was told, because I can't ensure safety and they will not be opened until the shelter-in-place order has been lifted. I noticed social distancing was not being observed by attendees at the flea market this morning. Let's get our priorities straight. open the tennis courts. The governor is opening retail stores this Friday. And it looks like I just got one more in under public comment. This one is from Karina Porter. It's time to open up our small town and support our businesses. My husband and I both work in big companies where there are a ton of people and yet only 2 positive COVID tests within all those employees. And even at that, it has been well over 3 weeks and it has not spread. This is blown up and I feel like we need to take in the fact that all this staying at home is very depressing and is hurting so many of our citizens. Look at the facts, not the media. And then that was it for, we have one more under a specific agenda item.
Thank you, Tina. On the public comment, I certainly would like to thank you. All the public comment, they came through the email. And same thing, everybody concerned, same thing, we have a concern. We would like to open the economy. We would like to open this business. Business are really hurting. And we are following the direction from the governor's office and also Sacramento Health Public Department. And we certainly want to do what the best for the city. And we will do what the best we can do. Thank you. Anybody want a short comment on any council member? Or I can move the next.
Good. Mr. Please, could you address the question about the tennis courts, just so I can circle back to it? Or Tom, maybe you can, if Mr. Solis didn't hear me. Oh, there he is.
Yeah, I can hear you. I don't know if Tom wants to answer that or I do, or if he wants me to.
You can go ahead.
So under the mandate, and I confirmed this with the city manager, that it states that to open these spaces, they must be in conformance with social distancing requirements as defined in the order and restrictions on access and use established by government or other entity that manages such area to reduce crowding and risk of transmission of COVID. Such restrictions may include, but are not limited to, restricting the number of entries, closing the area to vehicular access and parking, or closure to all public access. We determined that we don't have the staffing to have on the sites to ensure that they are properly disinfected or to ensure proper social distancing.
You're talking about tennis court, though. I mean, as a tennis player myself, I wondered from the beginning why that was something that was restricted. So it only made sense to me when I read that tennis was being allowed again. I think we should reconsider that. I don't know about disinfecting the courts, but if they're unlocked during business hours or daylight hours and then they're locked at night, I don't see a problem with policing that up any more than we're policing up, an open space that I'm looking at right now where there's people out, with a couple kids on the grass. Just my opinion, but I think I would like to see that revisited.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you. Next agenda item is F, information consent calendar. Tina, could you read all the information consent except F3?
Yes, but first we need to do reports by city council members on regional boards, commissions, and committees.
Oh yeah, E. Sorry about that. Vice Mayor Lozano.
Yes, had a SACOG Policy and Innovation Committee meeting yesterday, and there were quite a few items on the agenda, and I want to thank Public Works Director Mike Selling for kind of helping me manage through a couple of the items. One in which was the how the money is going to be distributed through this cycle of distribution. The SACOG in the last about 16 or 18 years has done competitive grants only on a regional basis to provide funding for agencies. There's been a push from some cities. One is ours, to do a combination of formulaic and competitive. And one of the advantages of doing it in a formula type of fashion is that we don't tie up all of our money hoping that we're going to get an additional money through a competitive process. That allows us to continue to move our programs and projects forward. And then we recognize also, though, that there is a need to have a competitive process in which agencies apply so that we can, take care of the entire region. And so there was a little bit of discussion at the Policy and Innovation Committee. Both Councilmember Kozlowski from Folsom and I spoke supporting some type of a percentage of formula-driven disbursement. There was some opposition from another agency or another jurisdiction on the committee. This is going to continue to go through the different committees, and they'll have input, and then certainly back to the SACOG board. I don't know at this point if anything will change, but I appreciate Public Work Director Selling and his activism at the staff level for SACOG, really pushing this forward. The other issue, one of the other issues that came up was budget issues. SACOG is looking at a significant hit to their budget. Looks like at this point, they're going to anticipate using about $500,000 in reserves this year. And that's a little bit of a conservative approach, but certainly in August, they're going to bring budget revisions back forward. And August is the anticipated time. But to get the budget out, it looks like they're going to make about $500,000 in budget reserves to balance the budget. So the COVID-19 is hitting every jurisdiction, and so they're trying to stay on top of it and ensure that they do the best we can with the money that we have. And then lastly, we had a conversation about vehicle miles traveled and how COVID-19 has affected the vehicle miles traveled, which is one of the main concerns that SACOG has, because, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which is a requirement of the state, and to do all these transportation issues that are unfunded mandates from the state. When people aren't on the road, it really helps that case. But certainly they recognize that not only does it may help that, but it certainly hurts the economy. And so we had a little bit of a discussion on teleconferencing and what SACOG could do for private and public agencies to encourage more teleconferencing and balancing that with what the local economies would be able to hold. And so one of the points that I made was that, I'm a proponent of teleconferencing and have been for a long time. There were a couple of issues. One is how do agencies and or companies look at supervision models differently and things like that. You have people that are, that are my age and older that are maybe not as technological gurus as others may be, and so that could cause a problem. And then also the other part of it is what does it do to the local economy and sales tax revenue during the workday for places around these workplaces. So there's lots of discussion about that, but they're going to bring all this to the full board next month in June, so there'll be more to it. And then lastly, not on behalf of the city council, but on behalf of myself as a council member here in Galt, I signed a a letter that went to the governor encouraging the governor to fund Green Means Go from a stimulus perspective and so that we can get some money to take care of the roadways right out of the state coffers rather than, in my opinion, again, going back to the taxpayer. But so if you guys remember, Green Means Go was a $400 million ask of the governor last year over a 4-year period through a budgeted process, not a tax process. And so SACOG is going back out to the legislature through the budget process and asking for some of that to be funded this year. So one of the interesting things that was said yesterday was there's many studies that have been done. Just I'm kind of going back now to telecommuting real quick. One of the studies that have been done is pre-COVID-19. Only about 7% of the civilian workforce were telecommuting, and they don't have a number that they believe is in effect now, but they certainly can imagine that that's much higher than it was before. And just me personally, I drive in northbound 99 every day to go to work, and for a month there was no traffic. It'd take me normal on a good day would take at 6:30 in the morning. It would take me 40 minutes to get to work. It was taking me 15 minutes for a long time. So there were a lot of people, I believe, still telecommuting, and a lot of state agencies are taking advantage of that as well. So whatever we can do, I think as an organization, as a city, to continue to encourage telecommuting even after the COVID-19, I think it'd be a good thing, keeping in mind that we want to have folks in the buildings for customer service issues. But if there's a way to do any telecommuting, I think that would be a good idea. So that's all I have. There is a SACOG meeting, I believe, a week from Thursday, and so I'll report back out on that later.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Lozano. Council Member Campion.
Yeah, since last meeting, the South County HCP met, Habitat Conservation. There's a slight agenda. They accepted their first lands for dedication. It was about a little over 300 acres. So that was accepted by the board. They also entered into an agreement with the Van Fleck Ranch, I believe, Chris. That was for about 1,000 acres for future acquisition, and ultimately about 3,000. So they have acquired land for mitigation purposes. That's it.
Thank you, Council Member Camp. Council Member Lampson.
Yes, we had a air quality board meeting, and we had, sounds like a lot of what Council or Vice Mayor Lozano was talking about. We talked about the greenhouse gas plan, and we actually had a public hearing on that. And City of Sacramento adopted theirs in 2012. City of Elk Grove adopted their greenhouse plan in 2019. Their target years are 2020, 2030, and 2050. Galt is in the process, it's in development, and our target years are 2030, 2050. And one of the big things they talked about was by 2050, they hope to no longer have natural gas in homes for a lot of reasons. When you use your stove and you cook, you're actually releasing some gas into the ozone, because when you burn something, there's always a waste product. It's also a second pipe the contractors have to do, and because of some of the explosions they've had over in the Bay Area, now the safety protocols are a lot stricter on natural gas. So the contractors, of course, are all for not having to build homes with natural gas and electricity. So that is something that they're hoping to do by 2050. The houses that have them now, of course, will be grandfathered in, but that was the big thing with the public hearing. And they did mention how the air quality is better. It's been getting better. even before we went on the quarantine, but the quarantine has helped. So hopefully we can meet those goals that we have set. And they've put the budget, they're being, of course, everyone is worried about the budget. They're continuing on with the budget process and being cautiously optimistic that we won't have to lay too many people off because of the COVID budget crisis. And then the Youth Commission, we put off a meeting, and I actually found out on the city's Facebook page that we extended the application process. So if anybody knows any youth that would like to apply to serve on the Youth Commission next year, the application process, you can get it off the city website. We would love to have some new youth members serving. That's all.
Thank you. Council Member Farmer.
Yeah, I had last week at a Sacramento County Library Authority meeting, and they're pretty intense meetings. Actually, there's a Zoom meeting course like this, probably over 100 people participating, and making some hard decisions right now about that the libraries are still closed, how to figure out how to continue to pay staff or not pay. And if we do, how do we pay them with personal time off versus catastrophic funds or catastrophic leave? And so it's tough. A lot of public comment, and receiving a lot of emails, actually from people who work at the library, and libraries are really important to people, not only to the people that work there, but to the community. I get a lot of emails since I've been serving on this, pleading to reopen the libraries in some capacity. And so it's some tough decisions. So we're working on that, and hopefully we can get the libraries back open soon. And that's about what I have to report on that.
Thank you. I have nothing to report, but I have a meeting next week, Sacramento Transportation Authority, and I will get back to you next meeting. Next, item F, information consent calendar. Tina, could you read the recommend action except item F3?
Accept the minutes as submitted, receive and file warrants for the period ending April 22nd, 2020, adopt a resolution ratifying the Cosumnes Subbasin Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, or SGMA, Working Group Framework Agreement for Phases 3 and 4 of Groundwater Sustainability Plan Development dated January 9th, 2020, and adopt ordinance 2020-01, amending the district zoning map of the city of Galt for the Cardozo 2 subdivision to rezone 59.17 acres of land identified as assessor's parcel number APN 150-0101-076 and 077 from low density single family residential district R1A and open space OS to maximum density single family residential district R1C and open space.
Vice Mayor Lozano.
Yeah, I would like to move those items for approval.
Second.
All right, motion moved by Vice Mayor Lozano, second by Council Member Lampson. Ina, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Vice Mayor Lozano,
Aye.
Councilmember Farmer,
Aye.
Councilmember Campion,
Aye.
Councilmember Lampson,
Aye.
Mayor Sandu.
Aye. Motion passed by 5-0. So next agenda item G, schedule matter notice of public hearing. There is no notice of public hearing schedule matter.
I'm sorry, we need
Did
to
we
do,
want to go back to item F3?
Thank you, Mr. Hagan. All right, F3, subject Blue Dog distribution rent reduction lease agreement amendment. Sean Farmer.
Thank you, Mayor. City Manager Haglund and I did speak briefly about this a couple days ago, and I give this some additional thought, and I had some concerns and some questions. So I wanted to pull this item, and basically, just for those of the public that are not aware of what this is, the city recently acquired a building we purchased at 140 Enterprise Court, which we found was more economical for the city to purchase to house our public works facility that we've been trying to build for some amount of time. There's current tenants in there, and one of the largest tenants is Blue Dog Distributing. They're a beverage distributor, and they basically approached the city asking for a rent reduction due to the shelter-in-place order. So, and, initially, what is being asked of the council is to reduce rent because of a hardship that the tenant has come forward and said that they are losing a certain percentage of their business, and they're asking for a reduction in that. Of course, the city doesn't want to lose a tenant, and we want to be reasonable. The gist of it is that there's a we're proposing a 50% reduction in rent for a couple months, I think, with some discretion at the city manager to extend out further than that. They do have to provide financial information showing that they need this, that they've proved that they've lost revenue, and also if they were to go after any state emergency funding of any sort that's out there, that money would be reimbursed to the city. So on the skin, it sounds good and fair and stuff, but I've had some people email me in the community, which kind of sparked some further thought on my part. And, the problem I have here is that, there's a lot of businesses in Galt that are hurting, and a lot of businesses that have been shut down completely, not just losing a percentage of their business, but losing their business entirely. There's a lot of landlords that may be being asked for rent reduction. What I think is a little unfair is that, it just happens to be a weird circumstance that the city is the landlord for this particular business. But I think it's a little unfair that we just forgive a certain portion of rent for a tenant when we're not doing anything for the other businesses in town. I mean, we're clearly not talking about waiving like business license fees or, part of the city bill to a business that's suffering, or maybe a business that's completely been shut down for the last 6 weeks. We're not doing any of that stuff. So for us to give a concession just because it's our tenant seems a little bit unfair. Any reduction we do is obviously a loss in money, which is, equates to taxpayer money. So the taxpayers are the one that are going to take the hit on this. Also too, I think as we make decisions from this point forward, we're in a structural deficit, and that's only getting worse by the day. The city can only afford to do what we can afford. So we need to be very conscious of what we're able to do. Now, again, I circle back to the fact that we don't want to lose a tenant. But here's a couple of things that jumped out at me that I was a little bit that I questioned. It bothered me. So it says in the staff report that on March 19th is when Governor Newsom issued the state of emergency shelter-in-place order. And that is the same day that the tenant Blue Dog came to Public Works asking about a rent reduction. They basically came and inquired the very day of the shelter in place. Now, you could be saying that they were preemptively anticipating a reduction in rent, but at that point, it was the day of. They have no idea how this was going to impact them. I did a little research on the company. It seems that the reduction in business that they have seen one would probably be in the small restaurant, but they also serve grocery. They also serve some other entities which have been doing fairly well in this pandemic. So, how much they've been hit by the pandemic, I don't know. It could be 50%, it could be 20%. I know that we're talking about reducing their rent accordingly, but I think that they strike me as a business that have been around for a while. It would be surprising to me as a business of this size, paying the amount of rent they do, couldn't have the means to survive 30 days without going out of business. It clearly says that the council's alternative is to not grant any rent relief, and if so, they will probably go out of business. and then we'll be looking for a new tenant. It seems a little extreme to me. I don't think they're going to go out of business because of 30-day of 50% reduction. Let's just assume they lost 50% of their business. So if they lost half their business for 6 weeks, if that's going to put them out of business, I'm not going to judge them on their business plan, but it just seems that that's probably not likely. Most likely they would struggle and struggle to catch up. So again, the fact that we're not helping other businesses and we're kind of, it's just lucky that they happen to be the city's tenant. I have a tenant myself that came to me asking for, what could we do? And my family has other tenants, and some of them have been shut down completely. Like they're not operating at all. And so I sympathize, and I'm a pro-business guy. I get it. And so I don't want to come off as unsympathetic to small business or any business. I understand what they're going through. I'm going through the same thing with my two businesses myself. One of them's almost shut down completely. The other is operating at like half. So I get it. But I would be more likely to propose something for the council along the lines of a deferment instead of a reduction. So what I had in mind was for, let's say, so we've been in 6 weeks under shelter in place. They're probably just now feeling the impact of that. And they obviously didn't feel it at first, but they probably started to feel the repercussions of that. Say maybe for 2 months or 3 months that we reduce their rent by half. We take the half that we're reducing the rent and we defer that onto, say, the next 6 months of their rent. So if they're paying, sees here in the staff report that basically their rent's like $11,000, and so we're reducing that by like $5,000 or $5,500. So if I'm just using a $5,000 figure, if we reduce by half for 3 months, $15,000, we break the $15,000 up over a 6-month period when they are able to get their feet back, on stable ground, maybe, in 90 days from now. And then we break that up over 6 months or however much longer their lease is, and they can, add a little bit once they return to business. I think that would be more fair, because then we're not giving a handout to someone in the community. We're more like just making a concession, but there's no money lost to the taxpayer. The city needs that money. And I don't think it's right and fair to other businesses in town that we are quick to just give away that kind of cash to a tenant just because they're ours, when, like I said, other businesses suffer. So I'd be interested to see what the other council members have to say on this, or what their feelings are on this matter.
Any other council member want to make a comment?
Yeah, I will. I understand what you're saying, Sean. A couple of distinctions, though. One, we are the landlord, and therefore, if the city chooses to defer that payment or waive that payment, I see little relationship with other businesses in the community. Other businesses in the community have different landlords, and it is up to those landlords then to make that decision. And again, that's not being indifferent to the businesses in town. That's just the relationship when it comes to being a landlord and a tenant. And I see a very clear distinction there. I do agree that asking for the reduction on the day that the shelter-in-place order was put seems a little odd to me, and I don't know that they would have felt the full ramifications unless they had some advanced knowledge that no one else had, that industry or that sector of the food industry would be hit first and very different.
Kurt, your mute's on. There you go.
We're gonna start all over.
No, we just missed the last sentence, I think.
Okay. The point of deferring it, I agree. I don't know that 6 months is going to be sufficient. Again, it's not necessarily the city's business to get into their business and their books to know whether they're making it or not. But if we are going to defer it or waive fees, I think that the city should be able to legitimize, that cost, or that they have suffered that loss. So to that extent, I do agree with you. I don't think 6 months would be sufficient, or it depends on how long. If we're going to go a 2-month deferral or a 3-month deferral, to make that up at 6 months, I think may be a little bit difficult, because no one knows what's going to happen in the next 6 months, particularly in this industry. How many restaurants will actually be up and running? I mean, right now they're up to 50% capacity if they are open at all. So it's going to be a difficult scenario. I would be willing to be open to work with the property owner to one, maintain them as a tenant, and to ensure the viability in the future for their business.
Just to comment back to what you were saying, is that, like I said, we don't want to lose a tenant, but I think it seems a little bit extreme to say that we're going to go out of business unless you give us a deferment for right away. I mean, we haven't even seen, I'm assuming we haven't seen any financial information from them at all. You just made a comment where it's none of our business to look at theirs. Well, if they're asking for money from the city to defer rent, that's taxpayer money, in which case it makes it our business.
I said, normally it is not. But if we are going to waive fees, then we need to be able to legitimize that.
Yeah. Like I said, it just, I think it would be a different conversation altogether if they were completely shut down and they've been doing no business for 6 weeks. But they're, and to say that they've lost a 50%, coming from, as a business owner, if I say my revenues are down 50%, well, as my revenues, as my business declines, then I make adjustments. I quit buying as much product, or I maybe lay off a worker or two or something like that. So my expenditures are also going to go down to a certain extent. So the actual 50% hard loss, it could be a gross loss, but it's not a 50% of net loss. I struggle, like I said, with just being quick to just, they come asking and we just, what I did for my tenant is I did deferment and they were happy with that. They were like, great. We decided to revisit it at a certain time to see when they're able to open up. And at that point, then we work out a payment plan for them to pay back the money that we waived rent. We waived rent for a month. Like, we just said,
Sean, my point is, what my point is I think what we should do is give this back to staff, have them go back. I mean, hear from the rest of the council members, but I'm good for a deferment. I'm not necessarily good for a straight out waiver unless there is just some overwhelming justification. But I think staff needs to maybe look into it a little bit more and come back with something like you just said, something that's agreeable to the tenant as well, and something that's acceptable to staff and kind of meets what we have talked about here this evening.
Well, we don't have another meeting for a month, so it would have to be, staff would look into it. Staff comes back in a month from now and shares it with us. By that time, they're a month further into rent. I think we need to set some parameters right now. I think we need to decide on some parameters that staff can go back to with.
We have a meeting in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I was going to say we have a meeting. There's a second meeting.
Yeah, I'm sorry, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think, but if we could come up with some parameters now, some negotiating parameters more or less, to go back and see what we can do. But you have to remember, this is not our money. I mean, this is not me going to my tenant with my money and saying, hey, don't worry about paying that rent. I'm going to work out with you, which I've done that. But like I said, I was able to do it in a different manner that worked, because the city can't financially afford this either. I mean, the city's in a huge.
Well, it's what you want to. It's what you want to jeopardize, Sean. I mean, do you want the tenant to go away? I don't think
they're going to go 1 month of business. You think they're going to fail in 1 month?
Sean, I don't know. But what I'm saying is I think staff could go back and do a better job at negotiating.
Anybody else?
I personally would like to see, I like the idea of a deferment personally. I think, Sean, you brought up a good point, tag that on at the end. I would say, it's so uncertain what 6 months from now is going to bring. If we deferred whatever justified number or percentage of their rent for the next 3 months, so April, May, and June, as it reads in the staff report, if it's 30, or let's say it's 50%, just for the sake of argument, that's 16,500, and going back to them and saying how long would it take you to bring that, be able to add that onto your rent payment? I don't know that 6 months will do it. It may. I just don't. I don't want to be speculative of their business and what it's going to bring. I think that once businesses, restaurants, and places like that start opening. I don't know that they're going to open at the volume that they were, but maybe they will, and they may be overrun with business in that time frame. They may be able to Blue Dog may be able to pay it right away. But I think a good deferment plan would be good, as well as putting some things in place, like the staff report says, on justifying their loss, and showing where there's a reduction in business, and justifying that through their paperwork. Sounds like in my meeting with the city manager on the agenda item, that this company is more than willing to work with us. And again, I don't know about the timing of how they knew it, but I know a lot of people were doing a lot and that there are advocacy organizations out there, probably restaurant distributor organizations and associations that have lobbyists and people that research this stuff. So who knows what they knew on March 19th, but certainly I'm thankful that they came forward instead of just not paid their bill. So that would be my input, is a deferment, and kind of look at how long it would take them and negotiate that piece of it.
Any
So
other?
I did a little research, and they're a beverage company. Most of their customers are bars and restaurants, so alcohol. So we do know that was a hit right away, that the bars were closed. And not to speculate, but I don't think the bars are going to open up as soon as the restaurants. And like Vice Mayor Lozano said, if the restaurants do open, and when they open, they won't be at full capacity. So I'm not disagreeing with them that they knew right away. But I like the compromise that Councilmember Campion was talking about. So maybe we can come back with that.
My comment on this one, I thank you for all the council member. I agree with everybody. And all the small business, they are closed, they are really hurting. The business are open, they are also hurting the same thing, because they have a minimum fixed expense. And some of the business, they cannot afford their fixed expense. So on the other one hand, we do not want to lose any money from the city, because we are in a deficit. But the other thing is, we also don't want to lose the tenant. When the tenant lose, especially in a commercial building, and sometimes 6 months, a year, you do not get the tenant. So I'm agree with the Sean Farmer, we don't want to lose any money, but look at the other side too. And I'm also suggesting to the staff, if we're going to give any business any deferment or reduction, we really need to see their finance. If they really show us there's something they're really going to in the down, so we should be, but they have to show to the staff their report what their sale was, how they drop, and what their future bid. And we can take them back even if we give a 6-month deferment or reduction in rent. We really need to look at what they can happen month to month. If their business can come back, nobody knows this COVID-19. This never happened before. So if their business come back, we should be take them off whatever we give it to them. But if their business get hurt, we should be helping them, and then they can be able to obtain it. That's my 2 cents.
I want to add one more.
I'm talking about I same thing with the deferment. We don't lose the money. We can get the money back, but on a reduction. So I don't know how hard that business is heading. We don't want to lose the business either.
Yeah, I think there's been ideas shared. I like I said, I was only looking for some alternative to just. I didn't think it should be as black and white as reduce the rent or don't. I think there was some middle area that we could find. So yeah, I would like to see staff go back and figure out what we can work out, and kind of play it by ear. I just want to be careful to say one more thing is, we don't want to make sure we don't set a precedent here, because we have other tenants in this building, and if we just loosely just reduce somebody's rent, then everybody else is going to ask. I mean, what happens if a business comes to the city and asks if they can not pay their business license because they were shut down for 2 3? I mean, there's all kinds of things that could happen because of this. So we got to be careful the precedent we set here, and we need to be sure we show the city, the people, that we care about them, but also too that we care about the city's financial well-being too, and we can't let this snowball into a free-for-all, because as it stands right now, municipalities like us don't get any funding or any kind of bailout money at this moment, and so we're on room. So thank you for your comments, my other council members. So I appreciate that.
So does staff have sufficient information, or do you need a motion? You're on mute, Tom.
I'm going to have Mike Selling give a little bit of context to this, because I think they're, well, we clearly understand the direction and don't object to that. I'm not quite sure that the conclusions that were drawn were exactly accurate. So I'll have Mike just give a little bit of context, and then we'll take the direction of council.
Yeah, maybe for starters, when they first reached out, we talked about probably a deferment, like what you all are kind of indicating here so far. And that was initially. And then as this thing went on, we started to research it more, see what other landlords were doing around, and researching online and hearing, I think it was maybe Councilmember Lampton, or who maybe was actually Vice Mayor Lozano, referenced Restaurant Bar Association groups and what their predictions were. In fact, even this morning, I heard one such person indicate that they're looking at probably at least a year before they would be looking to get back to normal, and that's assuming that things start opening up here in the next month or two. So it is going to take some time, and there are stipulations in the amendment. I guess I would also want to make you aware of that. We would be able to see their profit and loss statements that document where are they at. They've indicated to us in our conversations that they're probably somewhere in the down 40% or so at this point in time. So it wouldn't just be an automatic 50%. So, I mean, they are a big tenant. The other thing that they relayed to us in the discussions that we've had is they had just ordered a whole bunch of product, because this is getting to be the warmer weather time of year when people are going out to bars and restaurants more, that kind of thing, before this thing hit. So they've got I guess an excess of inventory, and consequently their reserves are down. And so when this thing hit, it kind of hit at the worst possible time for them too. So that's just some context, to make you aware of relative to this indication. Yes, they are one of 3 tenants that we have, and we would not expect that the other tenants would be seeking such. But I think Councilmember Farmer makes a good point, and that was something that we very much considered, as we do not want to set a precedent here. And so we were very careful and very clear to that, in that this is very special, one-time circumstance type of situation. So, and again, that's what all the research showed, and in talking with attorney, also to see what else was going on around the state, in regards to landlord and rent relief or deferrals or whatnot. So this was pretty consistent with what was being done throughout the state from all of our efforts in researching this. So anyway, I can answer any questions if you have anything particular.
Well, if they are low in reserves because they've stocked up, then deferment, of course, sounds like it would make sense, because basically give them time to offload their product. If you could reach back out to them and see, kind of play it by ear, maybe we could, start it off at a 90-day deferment, and then see where we're at. And at one point, maybe they're just really struggling, and 6 months from now, they're just like, they just can't seem to stay on top of these deferment payments that we arrange, and then we can maybe do some kind of forgiveness at that point if we really think we're going to lose them. But I think I think, if my daughter comes to me asking for $10 and because she wants to do something and I give her 5 and I tell her to make that work, I think it's some tough love there. I think that's kind of what we have to start with. And then we kind of see if the $10 is needed later on.
Mike, I have a quick question. I'm reading through the staff report again. It is 90 days, right? Is what was originally proposed. April, May, and June. And then.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that was initially, and again, that was at the time, all indications were that things would probably be back open in 60 to 90 days. And then there was an additional 60-day, what they called ramp up period added. Obviously the light switch doesn't flip the day that the economy opens back up or bars and restaurants are allowed. So there was a 60-day ramp up subject to the city manager's discretion built into it as well. So it could be technically up to 5 months as it currently stands.
I like that time frame specifically for this business, and I agree that this is taxpayer money, but we also wear a different hat here. We're a landlord as well, and so. But yeah, I think if we go back and say, hey, the council doesn't appear to be for a total deferment, but can we work something or a total waiving of lease payment? But can we work out some deferment plan into the future? I think that would be okay.
And as far as a deferment, if the recovery is going to be up to a year, I'm not adverse to extending past the 6-month mark for repayment on a deferment up to a year at this point, because.
Oh, I agree with that. Yeah.
I think it's going to be very difficult to play catch up during that time frame. So, I would support that as well, and then maybe relook at it a year if there's still an issue.
Well, I'd suggest at this point that staff take this back and work with the tenant on to see if we can achieve an alternate method, a deferral method, as discussed by the council, and we'll bring it back to you.
Okay. Thanks, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe just to get clarification, if we could probably build in some authority, I guess, for the city manager to extend it up to a year. Is that what I'm kind of hearing? Or is there consensus on that?
I think what we're possibly talking, Mike, is the deferral period, and
right.
So there's a difference between rent period, a rent reduction period, limited to 90 days, unless there were extraordinary circumstances, then the city manager could extend it up to another 60. But what we're talking now is instead of rent forgiveness, because it would have all been over at that point, right?
Right.
What we're talking about is a rent deferral. So the deferral period would clearly be longer than the months themselves that would be deferred, which ideally would be no more than 3. The question is, in 3 months, even if it were 50%, and remember, council, it was up to 50% according to proof. It might have been 25% or 10% or something like that in the out months, depending on how the economy comes back. The idea then is to Mike, is to figure out what an appropriate deferral period is.
Correct. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that there was some consensus to give that authority potentially, whatever it may be, term-wise.
Well, a year, I'm good with a year, if that's the rest of council's comfortable with that.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, he why not?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. No, we don't need to any vote or anything on that, right?
No, we'll take it back, and away we go with the rest of the agenda.
All right, thank you. All right, next agenda item H, the regular calendar, city manager's office, coronavirus COVID-19 update. City manager.
So this is just the regular series of council meeting updates. The city continues to monitor the COVID-19 response with the County Office of Emergency Services. All of the city's essential services are operational. That includes police, our water service, our sewer service, and other public works functions that serve a type of public safety function, as well as our other city services, not specifically limited by the state and county health orders, are also operational. And so we're continuing to work on ways to serve the public, given the strictures of the health orders and the pandemic itself, while also working to keep our staff members safe. The public can reach staff. Again, this is by way of reminder. We've put this out a number of times, but the public can reach staff by calling the numbers listed on the COVID-19 page of the city's website. And the city's website is www.ci.galt.ca.us. And one of the very first banners that comes up is COVID-19. If you click on that, you'll go straight to the COVID-19 page. Today, the city's emergency management team discussed the current status of the state and county health orders. Those orders are informed by medical experts, including epidemiologists and other infectious disease experts. And they give the underlying authority for and rationale for those particular orders. Yesterday, the governor indicated, and then he did again today, that the state will be moving into the first part of Tier 2 of the overall program that will guide the reopening of businesses in California. And so Tier 2 is a tier unto itself, but they then compartmentalize it into certain types of businesses can open under Tier 2, under the first part of Tier 2, and certain cannot. And so they spent some time trying to explain that, in addition to the press conference that they held recently, giving indication or further explanation as to what those tiers would involve. The governor also spoke today that his office, his administration, will be giving guidance to the 58 counties in California regarding allowing certain regional areas to move into the second part of Tier 2 at an accelerated pace, or essentially before other regions. Counties, but he emphasized today that counties would have to make certain certifications and issue and provide guidance before this can happen. And so what the governor really was talking about and emphasized that as we move into this Tier 2 and perhaps some areas being ahead of others, that it was all going to be based on health considerations first and foremost, and that those health considerations would also include discussion of particular guidance as to those businesses, things those businesses would have to undertake in conformance with the state and county orders. So this, it was interesting because this morning at our emergency management meeting, the emergency management team determined to reach out to the Sacramento County Health Officer to inquire about having the health officer provide for more flexibility here in Galt. And we, of course, would work with the health officer to establish any specific instruction for businesses here in Galt. And we made that inquiry this morning. We made the inquiry based on the fact that the city has only 12 reported COVID-19 infections documented. We have no reported deaths. The city is located at the southern end of Sacramento County. We're away from the more populated regions of North County, and that we're 9 miles north of Lodi, which is the closest populated city in San Joaquin County. We also note that San Joaquin County's infection rate is approximately 1/2 of that of Sacramento County. And so, as the governor, we'll continue to work on that. We did some outreach. We were able to get a hold of the county health officer's office. The inquiry was sent on up to the health officer herself. We have not heard back by the meeting time tonight, and we will continue to follow up on that. In that vein and in that spirit, the governor also spoke today about the need for local jurisdictions to do the right thing and to follow the health orders of both the state and the county officials, but highlighted again that his administration would be issuing guidance to counties to follow on this any potential accelerated approach. Neither the city council here nor staff have any authority to be able to countermand the health orders, consistent with what the mayor said at the beginning of the meeting. And we, of course, also recognize that they make those particular orders after consultation with epidemiologists, other infectious disease professionals, to come up with an overall plan for the preservation of public health. Either stop right there, I can continue on with one other aspect and then take questions at the end, whatever the council's desire is.
Could you just say again, we don't have authority to what?
No authority to do something different than what the health orders say. The local jurisdiction, the local city council, the local mayor, in a general law city especially, but it also applies to charter cities, don't have any authority to make any other type of decision. Or give even, tacit acquiescence for some other scenario to play out locally. So one of the other things that we've been looking at and been following is senior citizen meal programs. As the council may be aware, we operate a Meals on Wheels program for participating seniors. We have for many years, the city pays into that and operates that. We have both city contribution for meal costs as well as staffing costs for the operation of that particular program. And as an early emergency management consideration, we went through the process of considering whether or not seniors had access to meals and would be able to do that. And so as I've updated the council before, we've been continuing to deliver meals to seniors. We've also done some outreach to the cafe participants. So Shibuya Center operates as a cafe during the week, typically pre-COVID-19. And we've been doing outreach to those participants who are not necessarily homebound, but would come out to receive their meal at Shibuya Center to get meals to them as well. So that we're finding that our Meals on Wheels program is working as planned, both from a historic program as well as from an emergency management standpoint. And so that brings me to the next point, which is that the governor's also talked about what he's referred to as the Great Plates Senior Meal Program. It was meant to be a program to provide meals to seniors and involve restaurants. It is ultimately a FEMA program, and we took a look at that program, and one of our instant concerns with that program was having the staffing resources to operate it, both to qualify and certify participants, to work through the process, the FEMA required process to do that, It's a type of situation where any jurisdiction that takes it on pays for all of that up front. You then request a reimbursement from FEMA. They will likely provide that reimbursement fairly quickly, but it's the audit on the back end that happens that is also a concern, because you have to have been able to operate, document appropriately all of the expenditures you've made and the reason for those expenditures, the participants that you've allowed, that sort of thing. That again, trying to our concern, as well as the concern of other cities in Sacramento County, was having the staffing resources to be able to undertake that. So we began to talk with the county about that, because the county was looking at operating that program itself in unincorporated county areas. And they were looking at spearheading it county-wide. We talked with them about them operating the program in Galt, taking on that effort to do the qualification, the back end documentation and preservation of that. They would pay for it, and that our component of that would be arranging for meal delivery and taking that on. The county was very appreciative of that. They were excited, I think, about that part of it. But we found out today that even Sacramento County is not going to work with the FEMA plan. They're looking at a plan perhaps of their own, and are willing to consider us as a participant therein. So we're continuing to take a look at that and try to figure out if there is some synergy that we can latch onto between the county and Galt for that program. We also note that there's really only 3 other counties in California, at least. Our best information today was that there are only 3 other counties that participate: LA County, and San Francisco County, and I can't recall the other county that's participating. But we're continuing to follow that program and see if we can work something out between the county and the city to see if that type of thing makes sense. FEMA reimburses partially, so truly this is a FEMA program. They'll reimburse 75% of the cost. The county would take on part of the cost, and if the city operated it, the city would be responsible for I think 6.5% of the cost itself as well. And so as we were juxtaposing that against the Meals on Wheels program and what we have been doing here locally since the stay-at-home orders were put in place, we were trying to make sure that we weren't being redundant in a particular program. But we also want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to serve any senior that needs meals. We note that the requirements under the FEMA program are more stringent than that of the Meals on Wheels program, but nonetheless, we'll continue to look at that, what the county has and what they may come up with in the coming days. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Tom.
I have a question, Tom, and it goes kind of back to the question earlier regarding Mr. Pryor emailing in about the tennis courts and the reopening. I did receive a telephone call from him late today. I received his message right before the meeting, so I haven't had a chance to call him back, but can you go over that one more time? When can we get those open? And is that the second part of phase 2?
Well, so the health orders read that you have to be able to provide for social distancing and sanitization of these facilities. And one of the things we can take a look at, if you're going to open them up. And so that was our initial concern. This changed on Friday. Today's Tuesday. We'll, we'll take a look at what we can do. One of the things that we're thinking of doing is, kind of a use at your own risk approach with signage or something like that. If you're going to go in, if you would be going in and out of the tennis court, sanitize the handle before you go in or out, or that sort of thing. I think even with that type of sport, you're supposed to be playing with people of the same household, because clearly the ball is touched by multiple people and that sort of thing. Not only 2 on a court, well, maybe up to 4 on a court. But that again is just some of it. Yes, tennis courts are open, but you got to continue to read further, and other things are open. You got to continue to read further in these orders for what's required to get them open. And so we were just going through the process of assessing that and seeing, what can we reasonably do. We knew early on in this process, long before the county health officer closed facilities in parks, specific facilities, we knew that there was a problem that, we were going through and spraying them down and sanitizing them. That's as good as the first person that touches it after you leave.
Right.
And so then when somebody else comes and you can't guarantee it. And so if you're presenting a situation in which you are in theory, guaranteeing, or maybe it's not even it rise is as high of a bar as guaranteeing, but you're giving an indication that it's somehow safe. And contact tracing traces it back to that location, or a probability that it was that location where someone became infected. Does that raise a liability concern for the city? And so that led us then to in this most recent statement by the county health officer, these activities, if you do this, it led us then to talk about kind of the at your own risk for those particular facilities that we have that are covered by the new county health order.
Yeah, no, and the reason I ask is because I know these things, the county health officer and the things coming out of the Capitol are just so fluid right now, and have been really since the beginning of this. But so I thought maybe we would take another look at it. I certainly don't want to open something up that's going to risk the health of anybody else, and I don't care what people say. I don't think this COVID thing is gone. We may be at a low risk. We may have low numbers here in Galt, but certainly people are still, infected with the flu, at least flu-like symptoms. And so I think it's important that we make that balance. However, the more often that we can get people out, and the quicker we can get them out and about and re-engaged in the community, I think the better. So I just asked that additional question because I do plan on calling Mr. Pryor back probably tomorrow morning and engaging that conversation with him. But so I wanted to let him know kind of a status update. But I appreciate you guys looking into it. And Armando, I appreciate all you've done to help try to manage all of this in these recreational areas that are not locked facilities. People can just walk on to wherever they want to walk on generally, and having to manage that's quite a challenge, I bet. So thank you.
Tom, did I understand you that maybe I misunderstood? Does it appear as though by providing the signage, warning signage, that is consistent with county health, or simply an added protection for the city's sake?
It's more of an added protection for the city's sake. And so what we need to do is, it's the theory is it's an added protection for the city's sake.
Okay.
What we don't want anybody to be doing is operating under the false illusion that we're wiping down the facilities after every single use or every single touch. We can't do that. And yet we think it's, if we're going to open them, we want to provide that fair warning. But if we also have to square that with the county health officer.
Okay.
And so we're just working through that process to be able to do that.
Good. And I did talk to Mr. Pryor, and he had he had questions that I could not respond to, and I think you've responded to them very well tonight, explaining that there are further details that aren't just, oh, tennis is open. So, thank you.
Any other council member?
I had some comments, but did we have a public comment on this item, or was it a different item?
On this item.
I would like to wait for that, and then maybe I'll comment after.
Okay, we received a public comment from Rochelle Herendine. And it says, "Good evening, members of Galt City Council. My name is Rochelle Herendine. I am president of the Galt Chamber of Commerce. I'm writing you in regards to an agenda item H1 City Manager's COVID update. As we all look for ways to keep the citizens of Galt safe and healthy during the COVID-19 pandemic, we must remember that how we react today will have unintended consequences for our local businesses tomorrow. While it is admirable to take steps to protect against the health implications of the virus, it is necessary to take into account the economic implications that may be felt long after the development of a vaccine. As you know, the Galt District Chamber of Commerce represents over 195 businesses in the Galt community, ranging from a single attorney to larger businesses that employ nearly 200 people. Even with state and federal assistance, many of Galt's small businesses will not be able to survive without immediate steps to normalcy soon. Prior to the pandemic, many businesses in the community were already struggling due to the significant increase in garbage fees. The compounded effects of the city's trash agreement and the pandemic have already caused businesses to lay off staff and cut hours, and in some cases, businesses are on the verge of shutting their doors completely. The latest numbers from Sacramento County show a total of 1,133 positive COVID-19 cases since February 2nd, 884 which are recovered, and 47 deaths, all of which were patients 65 years or older and or had underlying health conditions and or risk factors. Sacramento County's population exceeds 1.5 million. Galt has confirmed 12 cases, not all in which are even Galt residents, and that number has been steady for 2 weeks, even with the reopening of the Galt market in the end of March. The county now has approximately 26 patients hospitalized, spread out over 10 hospitals. Galt has not had any deaths from COVID-19. However, during this time of shelter-in-place order, our deaths from suicide have significantly gone up in Galt. We have lost at least 7 people to suicide. The longer business is restricted, the worse the economic fallout will be. This has the potential to destroy a small rural town like Galt. The Chamber urges you to remember your commitment to the local business and your commitment to keeping Galt's economy strong. That being said, on behalf of the board and members of the Galt Chamber, we ask that you take actions to quickly reopen our local economy and local business to be part of the solution. I and the entire Chamber board stand ready to work with the city to safely reopen our local economy and mitigate both the health and economic effects of this pandemic on the Galt community. Thank you for your consideration of this request and your support of local businesses. I look forward to working with you as soon as we move forward to address the needs of Galt.
All right, thank you for the comment. It's from the president of a chamber. I totally understand what was in the whole letter, and we want to open the economy. We want to open the business. The business here in Galt is really hurting. And the other thing is, I think you heard from the city manager, the mayor and the council do not have the authority to change anything, to change over to the health department. I was, discussion with the city manager about the county have a different, like in Sutter County and Yuba County, their health department, I don't know how they're going to open some of the business is mentioned in tier 3. So I will ask our city manager if we can. And he also already approached to the county health department what we can do for our city. Our city is very safe. As you know, there is only 12 cases and no death. And if you compare at the Sacramento County, they have a 42 deaths and 1,100 cases. I'm talking about, I think we all together here in the city council staff or mayor or vice mayor, we all want to open the economy. We want to open the economy, but we have to communicate to the health department. And I will ask, and I will also ask the city manager what the best we can do to communicate with the governor's office, communicate with the health department, if we can do to help to open any business. Any other council member have any comment?
Yeah, I have some comments. First off, so thanks, Paul, for your comments. And so this letter from the chamber is not the first I've heard of this. I've been receiving emails and business owners coming up to me on this subject for probably over a week now. And I also had about an hour phone call with Supervisor Sue Frost today, which was very interesting. And it was really kind of inspiring to speak to her. And she's basically advocating heavily on behalf of her district to represent her cities in her district, to basically appeal to the governor's office or the health office to, try to turn over more local, more local control at the local level. Basically say, you've set guidelines, and we thank you for that. So can we have our own ability to now decipher those guidelines? And because right now we're dealing with kind of a one size fits all. Efforts to support small businesses to help ease the pain of these forced closures have been totally inadequate. And let's be honest. I mean, small businesses such as Galt, which is made up of a lot of those businesses, a $1,200 stimulus or whatever. I mean, that's not going to replace 2 or 3 months worth of business. And a lot of people haven't even got one. I mean, I myself own 2 businesses. I haven't got a nickel from anything, like stimulus, nothing, not even business loans, help, anything. And as a matter of fact, I've only spoken to one business in Galt that's actually got any funds to help their business. As we know, we've read the stories that a lot of this funding has kind of went above, to the bigger corporations and not really trickled down to the lower level, which is the people that need it most. In our small businesses, they don't have deep pockets to survive something like this. I have, my family has 2 tenants that are not even allowed to operate in a capacity at all. And this is and they've received 0 money. They've been denied actually twice for any money. So it sounds good to let's just keep, let's just play this safe and keep extending things back. But decisions that are being made right now can have, years worth of impact. And, these are voices that are appealing to me, that they either can't access assistance. A lot of them can't even get unemployment. Like I said, businesses aren't getting, money. For workers who have, a full-time paycheck, they're getting full pay from their corporation or whatever. This is not a big deal. It's just like, hey, I get to stay home and get paid, no biggie. But for most people, 2 or 3 months without able to work or earn a living or go to school or daycare or do these things is crippling. And instead of discussing further shutdowns, what I think, our state leaders need to be doing is talking more about common sense approaches. I mean, it's a one size fits all, and Galt is not like Sacramento. It's not like San Francisco. And I'm not sitting here discounting the anticipated threat that we saw with this virus and the precautions that we had to make. But we can't just continue to ignore, the impact that this is having to the health and welfare of our citizens, mental health, spiritual health. Welfare can be defined as many different things. We did 2 months. 2 months is 6 weeks is a sacrifice, but we've done our part to flatten this curve, and that was intended to allow hospitals to get it, a solid foothold, and a capacity to handle a surge. And now it's time for the government to do more than just tell people to hide. It's 1 month is a struggle, 3 months could be a complete disaster, especially for a city like Galt. Even our city itself, our finances, we all know here, we're going to be dealing with some crazy budget things, and who knows what it's really going to end up being after it's all said and done, with the city losing its money. And so I think what's my duty as a council member, and that duty is to the health and welfare of the citizens and the city. Health just doesn't mean health from a virus. Health means, like I said, mental health. There was a mention of suicides. I mean, there's other deaths attributed to just the mandates that are not contributed directly to COVID, and we have to think about those. My duty to the welfare of the city. That welfare means the welfare of an economy. It means the welfare of a family or a business owner to be able to conduct their business and make a living and put food on the table. Businesses that have not seen a single red cent since this thing has started. It would be a different conversation if everybody was getting business assistance and money, then people wouldn't be worked up about this. But people are they're at their wits' end, and they're being faced to close a door. And this is not a lie. This isn't like, I'm going to close my door because my garbage rate went high. I mean, that's a different thing. This is real. This is people who haven't done business in 6 weeks, period. Not, my business has been hurt by something, but no business. And these are mom and pop places. A lot of, these mom and pop places are ones that support our community heavily. They're ones that give money to all the events that we do in town. They're always donating to like FFA and local high school and football and all that. They do that. And now they're just hung out to dry and they have nothing. And so, the welfare of our economy as a city is important too. If we don't help our economy and our businesses do something, then that loss is going to contribute to a loss of tax dollars, which ultimately will mean that we as a city can't provide services such as the police department and other critical things it's just going to be a trickle-down effect, and we all understand that completely. So although Tom is actually, totally correct in that we don't have the authority to do anything, but what we can do, we do have the authority to work as a body, as this Council of Galt, to join with other councils and appeal to our governor and ask for some flexibility and some, allow more local control from the health office to find ways to open up some of these businesses. These mandates have been very inconsistent. We have, people over at Dry Creek Golf Course, I see golf carts all over the golf course, two people per cart, but yet a hairstylist can't even see one client face-to-face on a one-on-one basis. It just makes no sense. I go to Home Depot the other day, 3 days ago, I was in Home Depot. There must have been 200 people, and there was 20 people in the one aisle that I had to get down. But yet, we can't have a husband and wife sit down in a restaurant and have a cup of coffee because that's not safe. It's just completely inconsistent. The mandates are changing all the time, and we need to appeal to our state and federal officials on behalf of our people, on behalf of our voters, to try to do and put pressure as much as we can to do that. So we can't do it by ourselves, I know that, but we need, I'm asking you, my fellow council members, start this conversation about what we can do and what can we do as a council to appeal to those people. So that's what I have to say on this matter.
And if I might just interject, as a quick review, that's exactly what we're doing. We started that again this morning with an inquiry, asking that very question of the health officer. What can we do to, we laid out the case for that I spoke of earlier, 12 cases in Galt, 0 deaths attributable to that. What can we do to modify things here locally, still do that within the bounds of the law, but it's clear to us that the governor is giving some sort of indication to counties. Obviously, he's talking about it very publicly, that there can be the potential for local areas that meet certain criteria. That he didn't articulate what that certain criteria is, and that health officer can make certain certifications, then perhaps we can expand what phase 2 means, and that and perhaps that would also lead then to being able to more quickly get into phase 3. So we're doing that. We can also, if the council would like, and it can certainly be a consensus of the council at this point, to have us draft a letter to the governor and to the health officer from the city council that basically advocates this very same approach. I think that it will, it's important to stay within the press them to allow us that flexibility within the bounds of what the governor is prescribing. I think it's quite candidly a fool's errand to try to do something different than that. But I think that what we do is go forward and say, look, this is what the governor's talking about. This is what he's indicated. We would like it not to be a one-size-fits-all program throughout the entirety of Sacramento County, but look at us differently. Look at our geographic position, both in relation to the North County and to the city of Lodi, which is again that closest jurisdiction, large jurisdiction to us. That's just further south. We're an island. We talk about that in a lot of respects. Galt still remains an island, largely surrounded by rural uses, even though we're clearly a municipality and an urban use. We're surrounded by the rural areas, and I think that we push that, or I recommend that we push that as far as we can. Like I say, we started that this morning.
Would anybody else on the council be willing to support a letter that Tom described?
I would. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, I would support on that, and especially there is some other city, the city of Rockland, they already sent same kind of letter Tom is mentioned.
I just have a couple of comments that I just want to throw in here as we're on this topic. I would fully support that. I also think that it would be appropriate to at least reach out to Supervisor Natoli, and maybe that's something our mayor can do on our behalf, to let him know what we're doing, kind of give him a heads up and give him the opportunity to sign on with us without pressure, of course, because he represents an area in which takes in much more area than our city limits or even our community here. So, and then also, do whatever we can do to maybe get the chamber to sign on to that letter as well and push that up as far as we can. I think that the key is sorry, my lighting's not lighting here. I think the key is that to get as many diversified groups to be involved and really push the message forward. So that would be my suggestion. And I just wanted to make mention of it. I think Councilmember Farmer, maybe you inadvertently said it, but earlier you mentioned the city manager said that we couldn't do anything. And I've never heard him say that. I've heard him say we don't have the authority to do anything different, but we are doing a lot of things to try to move that pendulum to like they were doing today, and working with the county health office. And you have to, and at least from my perspective, words make a big difference, because somebody will pull this tape up 20 years from now and say, see, I told you that Tom guy didn't want to do anything, and roll that tape. So
yeah, no, that's not what I meant. Thank you.
I know. I just wanted to correct that.
I don't have the direct authority to just
right
what's been mandated, and that's not, clearly I agree with you, Tom. We going head to head and just blatantly just having disregard is not going to be a successful strategy. But I think if we just appeal and act, like we're going to be responsible to mitigate any safety concerns and work with our businesses, maybe even on a one-to-one basis on how that business can open safely, et cetera, that's kind of what I'm envisioning.
So I've kind of had some discussions with the chamber president, and I've asked her, are you guys reaching out to the governor as a chamber group? And as of last time I talked to her, she said no. And I encouraged the chamber, they need to reach out. I'm kind of don't understand why they haven't done that already, but we definitely need to work with them. We can do a letter, they can do a letter, we can do a letter together, and really serve the businesses in our community, gather them together and to serve them all and get that letter up there. And if you read some of the things from Supervisor Frost, we all got a letter of what she thinks and what she wants to do. A lot of the stuff is already there, and she's got some great ideas. If we can join with her and see if Don Natoli is feeling that way also, that would give us a lot more power in numbers. And I agree, we need to petition and let him know and see if we can get something going.
She just did, as we were talking, I just received an email from her. She told me earlier when we were talking by phone, she was going to send me a letter that the city of Folsom had sent to the governor, and she said she would share it with us. I can send it to you, Tom, it just to look at kind of just like as a blueprint of what they said.
Yeah, the city manager of Folsom shared it with me.
Okay. Kurt, is that something you?
I support this. I haven't seen any of these letters, so I'm not sure exactly what they state, and I haven't had a chance to talk with Sue Frost. My only caution is that whatever we do in concert with public health, only because we don't have any experts in the city of Galt to provide that guidance. And I think that will be extremely important from a safety point of view, and from a point of view of being able to accomplish what what the objective is here, to open safely. And I think that'll be important.
Yeah. So like, for example, just to touch on what you said, Kurt, exactly. And so she gave me an example of, there was a fitness club, let's call it a gym in Folsom that wanted to open. So what they did is they put together what they felt was guidelines that they would follow if they were to open, following social distancing rules and sanitation. It was like keeping equipment, moving equipment further apart, minimizing how many people came in, all these precautions that, and an outline of what they would do. And then they sent that to county health to try to get the blessing of county health saying, would this be appropriate? So you're right, we don't have any experts here, but I think, like I said, if we were to, be given some flexibility from the higher ups, then we could work with Sac County saying, hey, we have, a hair salon or a group of them, or we have this kind of business and this is what they like to do. And maybe we can try to work with them and try to get some kind of, blessing that way or something. But any attempt.
And I agree. I agree. At the same time, I think that's an important role that the chamber could play in terms of formulating these plans, because they know the businesses better than anyone else. Maybe forward that to staff, have staff look at it, get some interaction. But I see a difficulty if that job in developing these regulations falls on staff who don't work in the industry and don't understand how the industry works. I think that's where it's important. If this is going to be successful, the chamber has got to really step up to the plate and say, okay, here's how we think, hairstylists can operate. Here's how we think, restaurants or whatever it is. And they come up with a format or a platform that then could be further evaluated by staff and then ultimately forwarded to county health. I think that's maybe a good possibility.
Agreed.
I think both the state and the county probably largely have ideas on how these varying types of businesses are going to operate, and the types of requirements that are going to be made for their operation. And so to the extent that they're doing that, I think our best bet is to advocate for the earlier application of those standards that they've developed in our community. They're developing those standards in concert with epidemiologists, other infectious disease experts, and in what to do. I think that's what's going to give us the most traction, as opposed to seemingly leave it up to us, trust us, because I think that we'll likely get pushback on that. Now, I do agree with Councilmember Lamson, all three of the above, having the chamber should be communicating with the governor's office independently. We can independently, we can together. I think that the letter, time is of the essence. And so what I would imagine is that after this meeting tonight and perhaps a little bit tomorrow, I'm drafting up that letter. It would be pretty much consistent with, I think, what we've all talked about. We want to operate within the guidelines. We understand that there are accelerated guidelines that may apply, to areas of the state that have low infection rate and all the rest. Please apply that to us. Please, help us figure out a plan that you'll be comfortable with, so that we can start moving right away. That we aren't having to wait additional time, so that we can help our local economy, our local businesses begin to become unshuttered. And I think that that's likely the best bet. I'd like to be able to get that letter, off to the governor and the health officer by late tomorrow. I envision writing it so in that way, but having the mayor sign it, and then get it off to them so that we can get this ball rolling quickly.
Thank you, Tom.
Sounds good.
Oh, all the council members agree on that, right? On this board?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. The last thing before I move to the next item, Tom, I like to thank you again about the senior player delivery program. We did talk about your explanation because I get a lot of inquiry from the seniors. So thank you for all the explanation about that program. But we can still gonna make an effort if that program All right, so next agenda item is H2, City Council Committee Commission Board Handbook. Mr. Hagland again.
So this was an item that Vice Mayor Lozano had requested, and to come back to the council, we've assembled the requisite materials. So in your packet, one of the things that this consists of is a procedures manual, if you will, of sorts for the city council, how the conduct of meetings will go forward, the interaction between council and the city manager. There's a series of sections, and it's technical in nature, just in the sense for here are the policies that the council will adhere to. This was an item that was adopted by the city council some years ago. It's always a good idea to bring those things out, take another look at them, see if there are things that need to be added, issues that may need to be included or addressed. And then the other item is a policy handbook for the boards, commissions, and committees. Some, I guess, not necessarily similar in nature, but it does articulate about each of the committees and some of the particulars for those committees, appointments, and such. And so this was brought back again at the request of Vice Mayor Lozano, with the concurrence of the council, for the council to have a discussion. And so we bring it back in its information nature as it serves right now. Encourage the council to have any discussion about it that you would like to have, and then provide any direction to staff that you might have regarding it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Mayor, if I could start. You're on mute, Paul. Thank you, City Manager, for bringing this back, and thank you to the council for having it come in front of us. We in our city's time have been pretty fortunate to have really good volunteers and people that really work hard at doing their jobs as committee members and council members. And there have been a couple of items this last year and a half that have popped up that I thought, I wonder if we have a policy for that, and the conduct of committee members or commission members or things like that. I think I know we did. We had a public meeting on one item of a committee member that we had to take action on, and so that was one thing. And then the other is just how the council performs and works together. And so I wanted to kind of bring this back, and I have reviewed all the documents, and outside of some typos and a couple of things here and there, it was pretty much what I had envisioned was in all of the documents. I had seen it when I first come on to council, but it had been a while. One of the things that I really was concerned about was, again, just the conduct of council members and/or commission members, either in meetings or outside of official meetings, and what that looks like. I don't know if any of you saw, but this last week, a local Bay Area city, I believe, excused a planning commissioner for some conduct that happened over social media, I believe. And so, social media has seemed to be one of the larger issues. I think our last issue was a social media issue, and so the basis for all this, at least for me, is I believe that whatever tone that you set in an organization is what's going to be the expectation. And so as I was reading through all the documents, it was pretty clear that like Tom said, it lays out what people do, how people do things, but it really doesn't lay out kind of the values of the group. So I'll use a council for an example. There's nothing in there that talks about how the council will act with each other, how the council will act with the city manager, how we'll address some of those things like coming prepared to a meeting and things like that. And so my thought is that we add on just another page of agreed upon norms, if you will. And Tom and I had a conversation earlier today about this, but maybe look at the way some other organizations locally, Rockland or Folsom or whatever, Lodi, what other kinds of things that they do in terms of norms, and how they address those. And so that's kind of my thought. And really, if people are kind of wondering where this is coming from, it really is coming from, we had the issue with the committee member from earlier in the year. We've had a couple of things have come to my attention, and I've spoken to my colleagues about this, about, information being shared that was potentially confidential in nature, and things like that. And so I really want to, personally, I really want to make sure that we have a great understanding of how we're going to act over time. And then also maybe put in there that we're going to revisit it as a body, whether we are the council or the planning commission or whatever, on, I don't know, the first meeting in December every year, just so that it's back out in front of, and so that people are refreshed on what the roles are and how people are acting. So I would entertain any, like I said, nothing really jumped out at me that was in reviewing the documents that was way out of whack or didn't make sense. All was just pretty basic. But I really think that piece of, establishing norms for the council so that, and the other committees really, and that would be up to them, but really figuring out what that looks like. So I'd be up for a discussion about it.
The council, Vice Mayor Lozano, my comment is, on this booklet, that, usually everything is explained, what's the responsibility of the council member, what's the responsibility any committee member, and what's the responsibility any commission. I'm talking about like in committee member, if we putting more responsibility, something, whatever is not, this is very voluntary service. So I don't know what else, we can as a city council or as a what else we can do, something we are not doing right thing, we have to do the right thing.
Yeah. I think that it's more of formalizing the committee and council's understanding of how people are going to behave. Um, you know, just in an organization in general, I think it's important for people to understand how you're to act and what acceptable behavior is. Um, you can go on to YouTube or any of these other crazy internet sites and see formal government meetings where people are storming out and slamming doors and acting in a fashion that's totally unprofessional. And if nothing comes from that, then that's the acceptable behavior. When you have a committee member that says things on social media, like this person down just recently in the Bay Area, if nothing were to happen with that, that would be acceptable behavior. And so I think just by establishing as the different organizations or the different committees and commissions, as well as the council, establishing what we are going to do or how we are going to behave, and taking a look at, again, how other agencies locally do that, probably wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah, thank you.
I just have a
council member.
Yeah, I just have a quick comment. Yeah, I get exactly what you're saying, Rich, and but I also think too, piggybacking with that, is we need to, I think, like for example, the action that we had to take this last year with removing the member from one of the commissions. Like you said, you were just making an example of something that happened in another city, and if you do nothing, then that's the expected. Well, I think that the council was acted very strongly in that manner, and we kind of set a precedent right there, and to kind of say, hey, this is kind of where we're at, and this is kind of what we won't really tolerate from committee and commission members. So although I think what you got here is a good thing, and I read through it, and I think it's all appropriate. And any additions that you think are needed, I'd be open to seeing, and I'm sure they would probably be, welcome additions. But I also think that at the end of the day, too, is how the council handles each situation. Like, for example, the way we handle the one is going to be the real, actions speak louder than words kind of thing. Where we going to, how we handle it's going to set a precedent. So I just want to throw that in there.
Yeah, and I agree. I think again, me personally, and I believe as a group, I think we handled that last one very well. But I even take it a step further and say, had we had these norms and expected behaviors put into place, maybe that commission member wouldn't have had to have been let go. You know what I mean? Because maybe then that behavior wouldn't have happened, and given us a black eye. And so what I can do is, and I'm more than willing to hear out everyone else, is I can put together a draft of what I'm speaking of and maybe bring that back, or even offer to have maybe another council member join me in putting that together. But I just think it's going to be important to set a standard. It's kind of like, we as a council are required to really supervise ourselves about how we do things, and by extension, then we are required to supervise the commission members and committee members and conduct. And I think having that the expectations up front should be done as best we can. And I'm just, I just want to make sure that that's all up front, and so that people understand what is acceptable behavior and what's not, and that out of ignorance, they're not making poor decisions.
Yeah, I'd be open if you want to drop something up that you want to add and share it with us. Sure. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, the Vice Mayor Lozano, that's fine. If you want to draft something, bring them over, we can discuss. But to me, we might have to have some kind of refreshment training on ethical and behavior with starting from the council to everybody, because in this booklet, a lot of explanation, but might be some of is not go through, not be read that. But you want some kind of refreshment training to everybody, or something you want to bring something we can look on.
Yeah, I think we're required every 2 years to go through ethics training, and we're on our second year of that. At least the three of us are, and we may all be on the same cycle. I don't remember, but so yeah, that's a part of it. But I think that I think more about how we are acting and what the expectations are more important. I think maybe it might be a little more clear if I wrote something up and kind of outlined it that way. Folks that come on at any level, whether you're a council member or a planning commissioner or a committee member, you understand what the city council expects of your conduct. And again, not that everybody has bad conduct, but when people don't conduct themselves in a manner that's acceptable, it shouldn't be the first time they hear it. And I guess that's my point.
All right, whatever you want to propose, just bring to the council or talk to city manager, we go from there.
Yeah, and I'll reach out to other agencies too and see what they have in line with that. Again, our documents are very mechanical, and it tells you exactly what happens when and that kind of stuff. But I was more looking toward the conduct piece of it. So.
All right, thank you.
And I'll work with the city manager on that as well.
All right. Any other comment for any council member?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I don't have a comment on this item, but if I could just quickly go back to the previous item, because literally, I think probably less than a minute after I concluded my remarks, we got from the Sacramento County Health Officer herself, and I just wanted, what it says, I don't want this, first, this is me talking, I don't want this to dissuade or cause you to be aggrieved by what Dr. Kassiri said, but what she was getting back to the city, it says there are no exceptions for cities, but we are making our case for Sacramento to be allowed to be on an accelerated path. I am very hopeful that it will be possible. So I just wanted you, since we were just talking about it, and this came in as others were talking about just this last item, I wanted to go back to it and let you know about that. We'll continue to advance our case with Dr. Kassiri because I think that probably first and foremost, it does make sense that the county would have to get permission from the state for an accelerated path. And then perhaps we can work within the context of that with Dr. Kassiri as to Galt specifically. The other item that I wanted to correct is I'm not quite sure where the figure came from in the letter that we received from Rochelle Herendeen and the Chamber of Commerce. But there have not been 7 suicides in Galt, let alone 7 suicides related to COVID-19. In this intervening period, I had asked the chief to take a look at that, and there have been 2 suicides in Galt in probably the last 6 or 8 weeks, but both of those suicides strongly suggest, by the facts and circumstances surrounding them, that they had nothing to do with COVID-19. And without getting into the specifics, when we look at that, it's very obvious that they were not related to COVID-19, were not related to underlying issues, whether it's the local economy or things like that. They were a very specific set of circumstances that led to those tragic events. But I wanted to clearly correct for you as a council and for the community that there have not been 7 suicides in Galt as a result of COVID-19. And that concludes that. I just wanted to make that correction real quick.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you. All right, next agenda item is number, I think, H3, Community Development Department, adoption of resolution of intention to form Community Facility District number 2021. Community Development Director, Chris Reyes.
Thank you and good evening, Mayor and council members. Chris Arias, Community Development Director. And as mentioned, the agenda item you have before you is the request to adopt a resolution of intention to form Community Facilities District 2020-1. Also, as mentioned at the previous 2 city council meetings, a team of consultants and staff have been working to create this new CFD that essentially will apply to all new development coming into the city. For new development, it will replace existing LLDs and a 2005-1 CFD. The goal of the new CFD is that new development will pay for its share of maintenance and service costs related to the development and not burden existing taxpayers. The Dry Creek Oaks Senior Subdivision is the new development project used to form this district. And just to make clear again, this CFD will not apply to existing homes. It is for new development only. And so the action tonight is the first step in the process to create this new CFD. And Renal Shaw with BBK will provide the staff report presentation. After her presentation, Renal and Mike Medvey with Wildan, along with staff, will be available to answer any questions you might have. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Renal.
Good evening, Mayor Sandhu and members of the City Council. Before you tonight, you will consider the adoption of a resolution of intention to form the new CFD. We've received a petition from the property owner, which encompasses 5 parcels of property known as the Dry Creek Oaks Senior Subdivision. It's located south of Bosaw Road and east of Crystal Way. Next slide, please. The CFD is proposed to be formed to finance 3 broad categories of types of services. The first category is public safety services, so police protection services, street lights. The second broad category is maintenance of public facilities, landscape maintenance, roadway maintenance, park maintenance. And the third broad category is fire protection and suppression services. The maximum special tax ranges from $840 to $1,182 annually. It is subject to an escalator, so it's the greater of 2% or the consumer price index. As Chris mentioned, when new developments come in, there is an ability for new developments to annex into the CFD. Next slide, please. So with the resolution before you, it approves the boundaries of the proposed CFD, considers the list of services to be provided, and sets forth the rate and method of apportionment. And then it calls for a public hearing to occur on your meeting on June 16th. We do have a clerical correction on Exhibit A of the resolution. In the definition of municipal services, we need to remove recreation program services and library services from the list. Next slide, please. Future actions, should the City Council choose to adopt the resolution of intention at this time, would be to conduct the public hearing on June 16th, adopt a resolution of formation, and also a separate resolution calling for the election to occur. Then you would conduct the election of the qualified voters and adopt another resolution which would declare the election results. Once that occurs, the CFD will be deemed formed, and you will adopt an ordinance which will authorize you to levy the special taxes. And that concludes the presentation. Both Mike and I are available for questions, to answer any questions.
All right, any council member want to?
Yeah, I have a couple comments. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Can you please clarify on the staff report, there's the table 1 has maximum special tax A, special tax B, special tax C. In the staff report higher up, and I'm just trying to understand this a little better, it refers to A as being for municipal services, B being for fire, and C being for maintenance. So can you explain that a little bit though? They're all three going to be, I mean, are we talking about A, B, and C all being combined together and assessed to the parcel?
Mike,
this is Mike Medvey. Since this is an administrative question, I'll take it. We really have the option to, when we submit the taxes to Sacramento County, we can either add them all together and just call it by the CFD name and levy it that way, or we can separate them out. I know, I prefer to do it all as one. I do have some clients that request that they all be broken out, but I don't recommend that since it makes the tax bill look bigger. But yeah, I think the default plan would be to add the 3 quantities together. They might be slightly different from annexation to annexation, but it would be that amount of those 3 added together that would be listed as the CFD 2020-1 on their tax bill. And that's the way it would be levied.
So that's what I'm trying to understand. So in the example on table 1, we have under A, we have 572 per residential unit, 279 for B, and 331. So, you're basically, we're talking like over $1,000. So are you telling me that on one parcel that in addition to property taxes that they're already paying, that they would be paying an additional $1,000+ just for the CFD fee?
Yes, and that is, it's a pretty typical amount, around about $1,000. I know that as you move further north into, say, Roseville or the Bay Area, they can get up to $1,500. I've seen some even higher than that, which is probably the highest in the state. And I've also seen them lower depending on what they fund. There are some that are just limited to the new infrastructure. So those will look more like the special tax C. But in this case, we are recognizing kind of, I guess you would call it a structural deficit to the general fund for municipal services and remedying that with the special tax A. Special tax B goes straight to CCSD, which is the main reason that it's held on a separate line item so that we can tell how much of that is coming in so we can transfer it over to them. But yeah, the reason this one is bigger really is because we're funding 3 different types of services. And also bear in mind that we are replacing some other charges as well, the whatever LLDs would have been annexed to, and then also CFD 2005-1. These new developments will not be required to go into those. So there is some displacement of other charges.
And
So,
my team did conduct a fiscal impact analysis, which analyzed the deficit of services, and that is the basis for the calculation of the special taxes.
yeah, I mean, it all makes sense. I'm just, but you know, it sounds to me what I'm hearing is that, and again, this is something that people are going to vote on. So, I mean, you know, this is not something that we're deciding on, but, you know, I just to say to basically that you're trying to, you know, make up for a structural deficit by, I mean, if I'm understanding, so basically,
John,
yes.
yeah, so Mike used the term deficit, but the deficit isn't the budget deficit we're dealing with today.
No, I know that. I know
Oh,
that.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just saying, yeah, I get that. That's not what I meant. That's not what I was understanding it as. Like special tax B for fire services is essentially, basically, I'm just looking at it from a perspective of just a common citizen, okay? Which I am, and I pay taxes on 2 houses right now. So if I was to say, okay, so I'm going to pay $279 every year on top of my taxes for fire services. So if I want to, you know, my house catches fire and I want the fire department to show up, that's what I'm paying for. But I think the layman's going to say, well, don't I already pay taxes on that? I mean, don't my tax dollars already go for that? It's different. I think people look differently at something like a CFD when it's like, this money is to take care of my subdivision, landscape, greenscapes, you know, the little park I have down the way, or keep the lights on street lights or whatever, keep the roads looking nice. I think that's a little different. But when you're talking about getting into like, I'm now paying extra for fire and thing, I think it just, I'm worried that that's going to come off the wrong way to, you know, to the voter. Again, I don't know how this is going to turn out. This is not, you know, this is going to be a vote, but I just,
So this will apply to all new development, and that starts literally from scraping the ground to then, you know, raising the house. It won't apply to any existing development within the community. And
Right.
and so it wouldn't apply to your house or
Yeah, I
your
get that.
houses.
I
So
get
what this is recognition, at least in part, that things like the lighting landscape districts that were set up in the 1990s did not adequately accommodate themselves to keep pace with the level of service. And so what has happened here, and what Wildan did, Mike Medvey in particular, was this fiscal impact analysis to identify the deficit that occurs, the deficit being the difference between what those homes will generate by way of property tax and sales tax and things like that, and the actual cost of providing that service. And so that's the amount of that these three add up to. One of them, of course, is the CSD's fee for fire services. That over the course of time, a CFD set up in 2005 is going to have a different set of fees than a CFD set up in 2020. Just as a result of looking at the instant numbers versus having to try to make up all of that over the course of time from 2005 on. So what we're trying to do is recognize as a city that in the financial interests of the city, in the financial interests of those who live here today, have their homes here today, paid for them yesterday, and live and work here, that we have that as we bring new development into the community, we want that new development to pay for itself, not to rob existing development of the funds that are present under a different set of circumstances when those developments were constructed. but that exists today, because new development ends up not paying its way, not funding that deficit that occurs in terms of service.
No, I understand all that, and I get that. We've learned a lesson from the failure of the lighting and landscape districts, and we're trying to correct that moving forward. And the bottom line is, if this passes by the voter, then it's just any new people coming into Galt that are going to live in some of our newer neighborhoods that are yet to be built.
Well, yeah. To let me clarify something else. So the CFD, the voter is the property owner. The property owner is the developer. So the developer will cast the votes, and the CFD and that was a condition of approval on the development itself, that they enter into the CFD. So at the point at which the developer then sells the house to the new homeowner, that CFD fee or that special tax will pass to the new property owner. Right. So this will all be enacted by essentially by the developer.
Right, but essentially we're not taxing anybody. People, these houses aren't even built yet. These people don't even own these houses. So
right.
Clearly, when someone buys a house, this is all going to be in the paperwork that there's going to be, a fee, just like if someone bought a house in an affluent neighborhood that had a homeowners association or something. They're privy to all that, know what they're getting into.
That's right.
Yes, the city will record a notice of special tax lien against the property, so it will show up in the title report.
So I'm sure you guys have done studies on this and compared. My next question would be maybe for Chris, because he's a little more familiar with locally housing and stuff here. Or I'm not saying that Michael or how do you say your name? I'm sorry.
Murnau.
That's the city. You guys aren't privy to what our local, but is this gonna deter, like, is this gonna basically make living in Galt, someone's looking for a house in Galt, they go, looking at this new house in the Dry Creek subdivision, or we're looking at this place down in Elk Grove or Lodi. Is this going to make us non-competitive in that market? Because I'll be honest with you, if I'm looking at a house that's going to cost me, I don't know, $500,000, let's just use that example, that price point, my taxes are going to be, $4,000 some odd dollars or $5,000, whatever. That's we're talking another $1,200 or $1,100 and something dollars on top of that. That's pretty significant. Are we right in is this what everybody's doing around us too?
No, it's Sean, as Mike mentioned, it is pretty much standard practice. If you go and look at Elk Grove, I think you'll find very similar CFDs, and in some cases, I think more, because they have a variety of special districts. I think Lodi is catching up and doing similar items, but development in general is following the same path really throughout the state, and it probably varies from location to location, but I think regionally we're still competitive. Will it impact a buyer? Maybe, but if they go to other cities, I think they're going to find very similar items in those home sales. So I think we'll still be competitive within the market, and we're finding that the home builders and the developers, we've been talking to them, and they're not, they haven't fought us on this. So they have not, voiced any concern about the numbers that we showed. In fact, Aiden from True Life Companies was on the line earlier and was looking at some of the material, and it didn't shock him. And I was trading emails with him, and he, from what he sees throughout the region, is just very comparable.
So the home builder themselves doesn't seem concerned. They're not concerned with this being a deterrent to sell their homes.
That has not been expressed to me, correct.
And Sean, can I just jump in here real quick? The CFDs have been something that government agencies have been putting into place for several years. While I was on the CSD board, we did them for fire protection in Elk Grove for probably 6 or 7 years. I was on the board, and they were bringing in large groups of area that was undeveloped. And so, I think your most people, when they look at Galt as a place to live, they're not just buying a house here because the taxes are low, or first they're buying it because it's a good place to live, and then are up until just really recently, our home prices here have been much more competitive than anywhere. And then that's where it kind of stops. I think people don't really look a whole lot beyond that, and our tax base is pretty reasonable. So it is kind of the standard, and those numbers that that are in Table 1 are pretty close to where we've been at the we were at the Kasumna CSD for many years. So
I would,
Yeah, and
I
I,
would,
and
Sean, I would like to add that the funding, that this supplies or provides the city does help keep Galt, what makes Galt attractive to home buyers, which is it helps us maintain our landscape medians, especially in those districts, helps put funding toward parks, which is important to the city, and of course, police and fire services. So Galt, this type of funding will help keep Galt attractive to families wanting to move here.
yeah, no, I get that. And look, we're clearly we have an issue with maintaining what we have with our lighting landscape, and this is the answer to fix that. And so I don't doubt any of that at all. I mean, it's basically, it's like, someone who buys a car. There's people that just always buy the warranty because they want to make sure that their car is serviced regularly, things are taken care of, et cetera, et cetera. And other people are just like, I don't want to pay any more than I have to. I'm just saying from some people's perspective, there's a lot of people out there that just say, the government just wants to tax us more and more. We're paying tax for something, and now we have to pay an additional tax for what we thought we were already paying a tax for, et cetera, et cetera. I just think of Dry Creek Oaks, and I get the whole thing. I'm just thinking Dry Creek Oaks is a retirement community, and typically your retirement age people are the ones that are most conscious about what's my property taxes going to be and this and that. That's the generation that seems to be the most conscious of things like that, whereas the younger is just kind of like, oh, it's just accepted. So again, but who am I? I'm not a home developer. I don't know anything about this. If the developer's saying that's what we got to do, I, as a city council member, I don't have a problem with it, because I know that I don't want to have to be trying to figure out how to keep a new area maintained when we already can't even keep what we got maintained now. So it all makes sense to me. Just trying to understand. One last question for you, Chris. I was going to ask you this before. With regards to the CPI, why is it that we're always using the San Francisco, Oakland, Hayward CPI? Is that the closest one to us? Because I feel like that's like, that is like on an area that, housing prices and things like that are not, comparable to us at all. Why do we always use that CPI in those areas?
I defer that to Mike. I'm not real
Yeah,
sure.
they discontinued the Sacramento Art and Arcade. I think it was CPI. They don't keep that anymore. So we always use the closest one that's available geographically.
Wow. Okay. And for those that are watching CPI, Consumer Price Index, this is basically, you want to just quick explain for the people that are watching this at home that can you just explain what that is real fast? Mike?
Sure. So Consumer Price Index is tallied by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is a government agency that tracks inflation. And when we set up these CFDs, one of the freedoms that we have is to increase it to keep pace with inflation. Since the cost of everything that we're doing is increasing by every year, we want to keep pace, make sure that the taxes keep pace with the expenditures. And that's the reason for adding a CPI inflator in general. In the old days, the LLDs, which I know that Galt has a few of, they were before some changes, a lot of them did not have inflators, and it didn't seem like a problem at first. But then after 20 or 30 years, we have a number of clients who have those LLDs, and they only pay for a fraction of what the expenditures are. So then when it comes to choosing a specific CPI inflator, there are differences between inflationary factors of geographies. We try to pick the closest one, and if there were one for the Sacramento area, then we would definitely use that. But in this case, the San Francisco CPI measurement is the closest one that we have geographically.
Yeah, and that's why I always thought that that was kind of, because if you're talking about cost of living, obviously the cost of living in those areas is the highest in the state, at least San Francisco. So, but yeah, it makes sense. I understand it. So thank you for your answers, Michael, and I still can't say your name.
Bernal.
Bernal, and Chris. Thanks for those answers. Appreciate it.
Good time.
Problem.
Any other council member have any comment on that or any question?
This is Kurt. I spoke with Chris earlier regarding a subject matter, and because I think I mentioned this in a discussion when we first talked about the CFDs. Looking at, you have you have developed property, you have, what is the other definition? Undeveloped property. But they did not have one for improved property, which basically we were talking about streets, roads, and some form of infrastructure. Going back historically, Chris explained some of the circumstances that we face today on some properties where we did have an unimproved tax. And in thinking about that whole process where, you would have a small stepped up basis for a special tax, even though there were no homes constructed, you still have costs, but it almost appears to be de minimis when you look at what the potential is down the road if you don't have development. And I won't get into all those details that Chris and I talked about, but it does make sense leaving it just the way it is. So, and I did have a question under special tax C, that would change probably by subdivision if that deals just with maintenance. Is that correct, or how am I reading that correctly?
Yes, that is correct.
Because it would be more geographic specific to that subdivision rather than a citywide cost. Is that correct?
That is correct. For this specific project, we had Chris look at the new infrastructure that would be transferred to the city, and what that would cost to maintain, based on some standard per unit figures that we've been using for the other project as well. We figured out a total cost for that and then divided it by the number of units in this subdivision to arrive at that special tax C. And we would repeat that process for future annexations, future projects.
But Kurt, you'll be comforted to know, though, that Public Works did the evaluation on the maintenance needs of the subdivision.
Okay. One other question. Is the special tax under A, is that based on the square footage of the individual, in the case of residential units, individual residents, or how is that derived? I guess this would be.
No, that's a flat amount depending on whether it's a single, whether it's a detached or an attached home, but it's the same amount for every home, regardless of the square footage and regardless of where it's located. In this case, when we do the fiscal impact reports, and there's some argument to be made that larger homes might incur more costs, but we have to go with what is standard practice throughout the state, which is for services taxes to keep them relatively level between, from one land use to the other, and it's the way it's always been, and I don't think it creates any specific issues. I have seen services taxes that vary based on square footage, and in those cases, it's generally requested by the developer as a way to maximize taxes on the property. It's not really done to establish proportionality between the tax and the services received. It's more done just to kind of squeeze every drop of juice out of the facilities tax, which oftentimes those are layered on top of the services taxes. So for a standard service tax, this is generally the way that they're done, and we keep it that practice.
Okay. Because I had seen in the past where they had also used the square footage of the land as a basis. at least in one case where they would, and there you would end up with different taxes on different properties depending upon the size of the property. It would say, rather than based on zoning or use in any case. So that's all the questions I had. Thank you.
So to clarify what Kurt just said, that is very interesting. So if you have a subdivision with, say, 4 size houses and the lowest is 1,600 and the biggest one's 25. So the fee for the CFD on the 2,500 is the same as on the lowest. Doesn't vary by square footage or price the house, not like your taxes would. It's just a fixed amount. Am I understanding that?
Yes.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Steve, I had the piggyback on the same as Council Member Sean and Council Member Campion. So that's been this CFD, it's no matter which part of the city you can have the lot, right? You can have the lot in a new subdivision, is house price is maybe more than 500,000. And you can have the lot in a downtown, maybe house price is 150. So both can charge almost $1,000 extra, right? And it also can be the same special tax going on Dry Creek development. Is that right?
Only new development would be paying this. I know that there are when we do studies on values, a lot of times looking at the assessed value is not necessarily a good measurement of what the market value would be. I suppose it is. Since none of the older homes that have the lower tax bases would incur this charge, I don't think we'd run into a situation where $150,000 assessed value would be paying a $1,000 special tax for this CFD. But there will be price variance. There will be more expensive homes paying the same amount as less expensive homes. And I think the main reason for that is the Mello-Roos law itself, and really the law that governs special taxes like this in the state, which is that it cannot be an ad valorem charge, and it cannot be based on the home value. We're not allowed to do that. And as mentioned previously, a lot of these taxes, especially facility special taxes, are based on the square footage of the home to try and find a good way to kind of have something somewhat proportional to the value of the home to increase the tax for bigger homes. But in the case of services taxes, it's just generally it's not as much a common practice. And when we prepare the fiscal impact report, which two of these 3 taxes were based on a fiscal impact report, we're trying to do it in kind of a scientific manner where it is based on really the number of people that we expect to live in the home, because those are the people who will be receiving the services. And when we do that, we use the persons per household numbers that we get from the California Department of Finance. We don't really have any good studies or data to go off of that would tell us how many more people live in a larger home or a more expensive home versus a smaller one. And then also, depending on where you are in the state, there's actually some I've seen some individual city staff commenting that sometimes their smaller homes actually have more people in them than the larger ones, or the same amount of people as the larger ones. But either way, we just, if we're trying to make this, kind of a scientific determination of how much is the deficit and who is, and who is benefiting from it within the home, then we would, and I got a message from Mike, and that's a good point, so I'll address that later. But we try to confer the tax on the people living in the home. Now, there is the issue of the special tax C. So if we had an infill development downtown that didn't add any new infrastructure to the city, then we would do a separate annexation, which is a bit like a separate tax zone. It would go into its own little zone, and the special tax C would be 0. And that would reflect the fact that they aren't dedicating any new infrastructure or placing any new infrastructure burden on the city. So, yeah, I appreciate Mike Selling for reminding me that infill development will generally pay less because they're adding less infrastructure to the city.
So is this CFD 2020-1, is this only for, because there was the map of the Dry Creek Oaks subdivision, is this only pertaining to that? Not like all the subdivisions moving forward? As if another subdivision comes online, then there'll be a different CFD that will go through the same process as this?
We will annex territory into this CFD.
Okay, so this subdivision is just the initial one that it's starting with.
That's correct.
The other thing I would like to clear about this CFD 2021, like, and if we have a CFD going equally all the city, right? And the developer is on the water, right? Nobody else, right?
Yes.
And the other thing, developer can have a no choice to vote say yes, because that can be in the permit. So this is whatever we can approve, it's automatically there can be almost no vote. The developer, when he gonna ask to the permit, if he gonna develop something, he have to say yes to the CFD.
That's kind of true, because we do condition tentative maps or paper lots with the condition that they have to annex or form this district, and they would not be able to get a final map without completing the conditions of approval. But I would add that they agree to those conditions of approval early on in the process, so it's not a surprise to them. But yeah, they essentially would not have an option other than to not agree to the conditions of approval and negotiate at an early stage. But our goal, again, is to ensure as we move forward with new development that we're not placing additional financial burdens on existing taxpayers. So that's where we are with the new.
And I think that's a very important point, Chris. I mean, in the general plan is very clear where it talks about public infrastructure, talks about public services. It says very clearly that new development should pay its own way, i.e., the existing resident should not foot the tax bill for infrastructure or maintenance caused by new development. And whatever that methodology is, whether you're using the average number of individuals per home in order to come up with this cost after doing the fiscal impact evaluation, it is what it is. And either we accept what this is to pay for those costs, or we look at the balance of the city to pay those costs when they receive no benefit. So, and I think that should be front and center here. It's going to be a cost, and ultimately the property owner is going to pay for it, but they're going to make that decision independent of anything else when they decide to purchase that home. So I think it's what we need to do, and I think we need to move it forward.
Yeah, no, I agree, Kurt. I think Paul and I are just trying to understand this, and just kind of fleshing the information out for the public. But absolutely, if someone doesn't like the fee, they just don't buy the house. I mean,
exactly.
That simple as that.
The council member Campion, I totally agree with you. The new development should be pay what their share is, but I'm trying to do. The public need to understand what we're trying to do and what it is exactly is can go. I do understand we don't want to be any way on the existing houses, but the reality, whoever going to buy, our kids or grandkids going to buy these houses from these development, they can be expensive. I just want to make sure, the public understand what we're trying to do. And I totally understand that, we are in deficit. We need to put that CFD. I'm agree with you. Any other council member have any other question? All right, moving along.
I'm sorry, Mayor Sandu, I did have, my
All right,
voice,
go ahead.
I can't get my unmute done very fast. I just had a quick question. You know, I've heard from a couple of community members in the last several weeks, both directly and indirectly, about how is this a way that we are, the question is this a way that the government or the city, specifically our city, is getting around Proposition 13, and if not, how is that possible? Because the perception is from the public that this is just another way to get additional property taxes to bypass Prop 13 and its restrictions.
Well, first and foremost, it's not an ad valorem tax like like the property tax is calculated. So it is based on the fiscal impact analysis. You establish the deficit for the cost of public services per home in accordance with the way Mike Medvey, you know, he walked through the standard process for, you know, calculating that. And so what this represents is not a way around Prop 13, because of course we're not adding additional property tax in the sense of an ad valorem tax. But what we are saying is that in order to build that house here, in order to serve that house here with the maintenance and the services that are required to be provided as a result of that house, here is the difference in the value between what it will generate in property tax and the like, and what needs to then come in to be able to pay for those services. What we want to be able to avoid down the road, as this city faced today, things that we have been dealing with instantly, especially over the course of the last year, having to lower levels of service because there isn't sufficient property tax and sales tax, or in the case of the market income, to provide the services that the community has come to expect. And so when you have that occur, you have to figure it out. There has to be more revenue coming in from somewhere, and that story is not going to change. But with respect to these new developments, CFDs provide a legal framework under which the deficit in the provision of services can be calculated and then applied to those properties that are going to create that deficit.
Yes,
and there's that explanation, Tom, because I'm so sorry, Murnell, go ahead.
No problem. There is specific statutory authority that authorizes the city under the Mello-Roos Act to form the CFD and levy these special taxes, which are different from general taxes, as Tom described. So.
And then I would add as well that to the best of my knowledge, the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, who was, you know, obviously part of the force behind Prop 13, and I believe they also had a hand in the Mello-Roos Act itself, but they are okay with the concept of voting with one's feet. That when you're going to buy a property and there is a special tax on there, and you choose to buy that property, that you have essentially provided 100% vote that in favor of that, and they are generally okay with that. Even though some taxpayer advocates don't like these services taxes, I think the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association is okay with that concept. What Prop 13 protects is the existing homeowners, the people who are already in their homes. It places a 2/3 registered voter majority on raising the taxes on them. But when you move into a house that already has a special tax on it, it's a form of unanimous consent for that tax.
Right. And the way I've explained it to people also is, when you go to purchase a house, let's say in a community that has a homeowners association fee attached to it on a monthly basis. Prior to buying that, it's disclosed in the sales agreement and all those things so that you know ahead of time. And some people choose to live in communities that have those that are either gated and they're required to pay their own way in terms of maintenance of roadways and all that stuff. So I look at it very similar to that, although it's not, but it's certainly at a certain level the ability for people to make that decision ahead of time and the most important part, and I think Mayor Sandu and Councilmember Campion said this earlier, and I want to reiterate, this is a way for existing homeowners and taxpayers to not carry the burden of new development. And that is so important because I think that's what Prop 13 does protect current homeowners for. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Thank you. Anybody have any more comment or any discussion? Do we have a motion on that agenda item?
I'd like to move that item.
Who's there?
I was on mute. I thought I moved it. Go ahead.
I'll second it.
Who's in second? Oh,
Motion by
thank
Chris,
you.
by Rich.
Okay, motion by Council Member Campion and second by Vice Mayor Lozano. Tina, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Vice Mayor Lozano,
Aye.
Councilmember Farmer,
Aye.
Councilmember Campion,
Aye.
Councilmember Lamson,
Aye.
Mayor Sandu.
Aye. Motion passed to 5-0. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor. I'm going to have to excuse myself from the meeting at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Have a safe. Okay, next agenda item is I, communication. Tina, any communication?
We did have one other public comment come through during the meeting from John Lindberger. Does the Galt City Council have a plan in place to fund the city services if the shutdown continues?
Thank you. Any council member want any comment? All right, next agenda item J, city clerk's report.
Nothing.
Thank you. Comment by staff. City Manager Hagland, please help me to get any comment from staff, please.
I will do that. Chief Sockman, do you have any comment?
I do. I'll make it quick, but this because of the COVID-19, there's been a number of events that are really important to law enforcement and the law enforcement community and everybody that knows some of the trials and things that have gone on, in our profession. So I'm going to try to make this brief. So this past year, 2019, we lost 3 police officers in our area, all by gunfire. That's Officer Davis, Officer Natalie Corona, Sacramento Police Department Officer Tara O'Sullivan, and El Dorado County Sheriff Brian Ishmael, all of them by gunfire. And so in the state of California, we lost 10, and nationwide 146 officers in line of duty. So normally what we do is we have a Sacramento County Peace Officer Memorial, which would have been on April 30th, but that was canceled. Every year at that event, we always honor Kevin Ton, who was shot and killed in 2013, January 15th, 2013, among all the other officers that were killed in Sacramento County. The California Peace Officer Memorial would have been yesterday, and that was canceled. The CHP Memorial was today. and that was canceled. And next, or May 10th through the 16th is National Police Memorial Week. And so the events at the Washington, D.C. have also been canceled. So, Galt's a great city. We have tremendous support for our law enforcement. We appreciate that in our community. But this week or next week, the May 10th to the 16th is really, really important and emotional for most of the police officers, families, and all the police supporters. So anyway, from me, all of you in Galt, I just want to say thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Chris Arias, do you have any comments?
No, I have none tonight. Thank you.
Claire Tyson, Finance Director.
Nothing to report. Thank you.
Mike Selling.
No, nothing to report tonight. Thanks.
Armando Solis.
No, thank you.
And Amy Mendez. Amy, you're on mute if you're trying. Okay. We'll go to Kimberly Hood, our city attorney.
I don't have anything specific, just we're obviously trying to sort out the governor's orders and then what the county health officer is doing, and it's all the counties are working on it, and what the regional options will mean. So we will be following up as soon as we get more information. Hopefully this week.
Very good, thank you. And then Stephanie Van Stein, our Human Resources Director. Anything from you, Stephanie?
No update this evening, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I don't have any comments, so I think it's back to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Vice Mayor Lozano.
No, I don't have any lengthy comments at all. I just wanted to mention that I appreciate the city and the citizens here in the region really doing what they can to minimize the spread of this virus and continue doing what we're doing and be patient as law enforcement works through the issues that we're working through regarding the crime that's happened recently. But everyone, I think, is doing a much better job than I expected, and that just goes to show you that we have a great little city and lots of people here that care about our city, and so I'll just leave it at that and thank everybody.
Councilmember Lampson.
Yeah, I hope as we move into stage 2 and 3 that we will soon be able to meet as a council in the chambers, even if we're still social distancing. Hopefully I would like it to happen at the next meeting, but we will see. And I appreciate all the citizens being on alert. If you see people out wandering when they're not supposed to be, call PD, because people are supposed to be home. And then Tom, hopefully you guys can get a hold of the chamber president, and excited that we can work together on this and individually, and the more letters to the governor, the better. And hopefully he will hear our plea and start letting the businesses and everything open up.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yeah, I don't want to recap on anything that the others had said, but I just want to remind everybody again, and the chief could maybe elaborate on this, but still seeing some vandalism issues going on. PD have dedicated some staff specifically to getting to the bottom of this. I've been notified by city manager and on behalf of the chief that our night patrols are being more for lack of a word, aggressive. If people are out late at night on foot or whatever, looks suspicious, they're going to be stopped, stuff like that. So we're going to have to just keep upping efforts until we catch the perpetrators, if it's the same people or if it's different people. I know it's frustrating for people who are watching. I get the emails, I see it on social media, but it's going to take a community. I keep saying this, and I just watched a video of an incident last week, and I was amazed to see how many people were out at like 3 a.m. in the morning. One kid on a scooter. It just blows my mind that like who's you know, where are these parents at? So I'm just again want to appeal to parents. You know where your teens are at, because there's some stuff going on right now, and I'd hate for somebody that's out and about late at night when they shouldn't have been get caught up in some action from a homeowner because they think their car's getting vandalized or something. So please keep your kids inside. Let PD do their jobs. Make it easier on them so they can get this solved. And I think that's all I had. Thanks.
All right. I just want to say to thank you for all the staff working hard during this COVID-19 pandemic. I also say to the community or the city citizen to stay safe and keep the social distancing. And I am a confidence if we all work together, we will come over all together. Thank you. If anybody have any comment, if not, then I would like to adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.